So beautiful to be together in this exquisitely rainy late monsoon day. I love it. I just love this, the power of the rain here. It's amazing because in America, growing up, obviously it was always nice when it rained, just in terms of drought alleviation in California. But it never felt sacred the way that the rain here does. And it never smelled the way that the rain here does. There's a smell on the land of India when it rains that is so beautiful. I love it. So we start, आपको देखना है, आपका sound. हाँ, ठीक है, no problem. Thank you. So we start as usual with a question that's come in advance and then open it up to everyone. Where can we find good role models? Everywhere. Everywhere. If your eyes are open, and your eyes are really open, looking for wisdom, looking for guidance, you can find it anywhere. There's a beautiful, beautiful passage, chapter, teaching from the scriptures about nature being the guru. All of the different aspects of nature. This particular bird, this particular animal, this river, every aspect of nature. How each of those can be our guru. Wherever you look. You look at the people sweeping the floor with joy, with love. What a role model. How many of us feel like that's beneath us? If I had to sweep the floor, I'd be frustrated and angry. And for me, one of my most powerful role models are these women who walk through the Himalayas with the firewood on their heads, or the ones walking through carrying water. I mean, you think these women are spending more than 50% of their day going out to get wood, going out to get water. Now, it's not right if you look at it just from a human rights, gender equality, development perspective. Obviously, there should be solutions. They should not have to be going out to collect firewood. They should not have to be spending all day to get a bucket of water. But if you pull the teaching of the women themselves out of the perspective of developmentally what's right, what isn't right, and you simply look at the smile on these women's faces, if you say to them, how are you? This was one of the first things that ever struck me so deeply here in India was, you say to these women, how are you? And they don't say, oh my God, can you believe it? And it rained and there's no dry wood and I've got to cook the meal. what am I going to do? Or, my God, my worthless, useless husband sits around all day long getting drunk and I've got to go out and collect the wood. Nothing. Just Sab Bhagwan ki kripa. It's all God's grace. And you think, it's all God's grace. What a teaching. I mean, yes, we know in theory it's all God's grace. But to be able to really live that, when day after day after day, you're going out to collect firewood that you've got to carry home on your head, it's all God's grace. With joy, not a sense of resignation, not like, oh, well, I guess this is my lot in life. It's God's grace and I haven't gotten any. Not that. Just this joy. Sab Bhagwan ki kripa. It's all God's grace. So for me, that's an extraordinary role model. Because otherwise you look around at people who have everything. And yet, do we really realize how much of our lives is just God's grace? If somebody stopped you in the middle of your workday and said, how are you? How many of us sitting in plush offices with water at our fingertips or a cup of something hot, fire, no problem, just turn on the stove. Everything at our fingertips. How many of us would answer the how are you question if caught unaware in the middle of our workday with it's all God's grace? So in terms of looking for good role models, just open your eyes. I mean, I guess, of course, it also depends on a role model for what. I mean, I look at the question, and to me, a good role model means someone who would guide me on how to live a life that's meaningful, that's joyful, that's connected to the divine. If you're looking for a role model on just how to make a whole bunch of money, then maybe these women wouldn't necessarily be your best bet. But if what you're looking for is a role model on really how to live, we've got them everywhere. And of course, if you run out of people in your circle, just open any scripture. The scriptures are full of models. Just yesterday when I was in Delhi for a beautiful interfaith gathering with UNICEF on bringing faith leaders together for climate change and so many other important things, I also had the beautiful blessing of spending some time in a Ram Katha, where the story of Bhagwan Ram is being recited. And when I was speaking there, I was saying, we get such teachings from these divine beings. Not just blessings, not just grace, but actually teachings about how to live. And so when we think about a role model, well, just open up any scripture. And whether you look at the life of Bhagavan Krishna, you look at the life of Bhagavan Ram, you look at the life of Bhagavan Buddha, the Buddha. Look at the life of Jesus Christ. Look at the life of St. Francis of Assisi. Look at so many lives. I mean, there's no shortage of role models. We just have to be open to really find them. I mean, I think every person who's getting up every day and going to work in a thankless job, checking out somebody's groceries at the store, I mean, they're a role model. of just doing their duty. They've got a family to feed, mouths to feed. Maybe they weren't as fortunate enough to get the education that most of us have gotten, to have the freedom that most of us have, not to have to bag groceries in order for there to be food on the table. But there they are with a smile, even in the middle of COVID. You think, my God, putting their lives at risk. But they've got to do it. And there they are, always with a smile. How are you? We're the ones always too busy. Yeah, here's my credit card. Don't talk to me. I've got to go. But they're always there smiling. So I think if we make a practice of looking for role models everywhere, we'll find them everywhere. And it's a very humbling practice. It's a beautiful practice. And it's also very humbling because it makes you realize how everyone can be a guru to you. Not necessarily the guru you're going to follow forever or take initiation from, but in that moment, a bringer of light, a dispeller of some aspect of darkness, someone who has shown us the way. Other questions? Yes. There's usually a mic. Thank you. There you go. Yes.
Namaste, Sadhviji. So my question is around theory of karma, and we have been teaching since childhood the teachings of Bhagavad Gita and all, and it's mainly around karma and all. So what we, of course, we don't know everything. We haven't read everything, Upanishads and everything. So what we got to know is whatever we are facing in this life is basically the result of what we have done in past births, right? So it makes us feel very powerless and hopeless because whatever we have done, now we cannot change it, right? Now we can do our actions, we can do service, we can do prayers, we can do chanting. So there is a little confusion within me, and I want to get the enlightenment from you that how much is whatever now we are going to do in our life, how much is controlled by our last births and how much is dependent on the our present janma karma.
Beautiful. So the law of karma is one of the most powerful laws, powerful ways of understanding our life, but it's also one of the most widely misunderstood aspects. People tend to take karma as something that you just have to resign yourself to. Okay, so I'm sick and I'm miserable and I'm a failure. I guess this is just my karma. That is not true. Now, the word karma actually means action. That's what the word means. Karma means action. Now, as we know, whether we get it from our scriptures or we get it from Isaac Newton, each action is going to have a result. What in physics we say an equal and opposite reaction. If I plant an apple seed, I'm going to get an apple tree. Law of nature. If I slap you, thereby planting a seed of anger and separation, pain, there's going to be a result of that. Now, it may not be quite as simple as you slap me back. Sometimes karma is very short. Sometimes it's just that. I drink a glass of water, that's the action, and the result is I'm no longer thirsty. End of the karmic cycle. I'm not carrying that glass of water that I drank into my next birth. But then we have actions that tend to have a lot longer consequences. And one of the reasons for that is that our actions actually form who we are. They form our nature. If I slap you, even if you simply slap me back and now, okay, karma's done, that slap to you has now created a sanskara in me, an impression upon my psyche. Maybe that was the first time I've ever hit anybody. But if I don't address that, if I don't stop and think, my God, how did that happen? How did I lose myself? How was I so unconscious in that moment that somehow my hand just did that? Like, where was I? And how can I make sure that I'm never gone again if I don't do that sort of introspection? Well, then that action is going to create an impression, a sanskara, a neural pattern. And what I'm going to find is that now I'm much more likely to hit people in the future. That starts to become a habit, a trait, a character. Now I am someone who hits people. Now my whole way of thinking of myself is different. And now, of course, we're looking at something that's got a lot longer ripple impact than just one action. In terms of that sense of I'm stuck, there's nothing I can do. Where you are right now is a result of all of your past karma. This life, past lives. The actions you've done, the habits, the traits, the characteristics you've developed. I mean, you're sitting in satsang now. Now, for some of you, this may be the first action. For some, it may be a new karma. You've come to India to travel. You came to Rishikesh. You came for the beautiful Ganga Aarti. You decided, okay, let's see what this satsang thing is. You come in. Now it lays a brand new impression in you. But for most of you, my guess is there's already an impression on some level. Many of you are here to be studying yoga. Somewhere in your past, there was already a characteristic, a trait that was created that has brought you to here because you are the type of people who come to satsang. And so you've got two different ways that you arrive here. One, it's the first action, the first karma, it's the beginning now of a new way of being. Or it's because you've already got a habit, a characteristic of being here. But either way, however you got here. Maybe you came here under duress because the person you're traveling with said, no, I won't go out for pizza with you until we have satsang. However you got here, it's due to the past, what you've done in the past, the characteristics, the habits, the relationships, all of it. And when I say past, it doesn't necessarily mean 20 years ago. It may be simply an hour ago, half an hour ago, you were sitting in Aarti and made the decision to come into satsang. But the past is what brought you here. what you do now is creating your destiny for tomorrow, for next week, for next year. So where you are now, at this point in your life, what your job is, what your relationships are, what your bank account looks like, what your health is like, what your brain patterns are, this is all due to past karma. But what you do now is creating where you will be in the future. I always say right now is the pre for all of that which is predestined to happen next week or next month. Right? We talk about, is something predestined? Well, it is, but that's because we have done something in the past to make it happen. So what you're doing right now is creating your destiny for the future. Now, can you undo the past? No, unfortunately, there's not a rewind button on life. Those of us who spend a lot of time at a computer, sometimes I have found myself trying to put computer commands on life. So in a non-Mac computer, if you want to undo what you just did, you do Control Z. I think on a Mac, maybe it's Apple Z or something like that. And it just undoes whatever you just did. And I have certainly found myself in life doing things like spilling a glass of water. And my initial instinct is, oh, I'll just Control Z that. Like, I'm just going to undo the fact that I just spilled a glass of water. And it always takes a moment for my brain to kick in and realize, no, actually, you've got to go get a sponge. Because this is real life. Like, you can't rewind it or undo it. But you can shift it. And so, for example, if things from the past are giving you a current situation, well, your current choices can absolutely change, if not the logistics of that situation, they certainly can change how you feel about it. And that's what's most important. So let's say, for example, that past actions have created a situation in which you're not as rich as your across the street neighbor. You're not nearly as wealthy as you would like to be. You scroll Instagram and you look at people with all sorts of brand new fancy things and you think, God, why not me? Well, so okay, whatever your past actions have created this moment in which you've got however much you have, including if it's not as much as others. But what you do now, even though it may not immediately be able to change your financial situation, it can immediately change how you feel about your financial situation. You can go from being poor to rich like this. Not because you've got some magic mantra that's going to bring piles of money in front of you, but because your way of thinking has shifted. Wealth is not what we have. It's how we feel about what we have. One of the other things that hit me so powerfully when I first came to India was the incredible generosity of the people who were so far below standards of poverty that I had grown up seeing. I mean, we've got a vision of what is your poverty level. And then here were all these people who were so far below that level. I mean, people who have nothing. But all they want to do is make you come home for a meal so they can feed you. Everybody's like, come home, come home, come home. And I would think, you don't have enough money to feed your family. But their felt sense experience was, we live in abundance. And okay, there may not be money for vegetables, so be it. We will eat rice and dal. But the experience is one of abundance. Whereas I grew up amidst so many people who had so much, but whose personal felt sense was of lack. And those are people who are poor. So, no, you can't wave a magic wand and immediately turn the fruits of your past karma that's currently less finances into suddenly more finances. But you can go from poor to rich, or vice versa, just based on how you think. And in the same way, that which we do, it changes our entire life. Because as is our vision, in Hindi we say, Jaise drishti, vaise shrishti. As is my vision, so is the creation. As I see the world, so it is. So a lot of us think that the key is, how do I change the outer world? How can I change my external situation? But actually what our sadhana is about is changing our internal situation. Because the minute my internal situation is changed, well, so is my external situation. And so that's the power that you have in every moment. So as you change your actions, immediately thoughts change. Your experience of your reality changes, therefore your reality changes. You start engaging in different actions. And so therefore your actual future destiny changes. So right now is the moment to grab. And the first place is to start with your thoughts, because that's where it all begins. That's the seed. And as we change the thought, my immediate experience changes. And then how I move into my next moment changes. If I'm moving through the world feeling like I'm an object, I'm just a physical body, my size, my shape, my color, my bank account. Therefore, I'm seeing others as objects. So I move through the world in that separation, lots of judgment. Everyone I see is either pretty or ugly, rich, poor, successful, failure, worthy of being my friend, not worthy of being my friend, someone I want to engage with, someone I don't want to engage with. Right? That's how most of us move through the world. As objects, seeing objects. But if I shift my way of thinking, and I realize I'm not an object, I'm soul, I'm spirit, I'm consciousness, I'm love. Well, that's what I start seeing in others. And then you start seeing others as consciousness and love. And yeah, they may be having a rough day. We've all had rough days. But it doesn't change the nature of who they are. And so we stop judging, we stop criticizing, we stop name calling. And we start seeing others differently because we see ourselves differently. And that's the power of our sadhana. It changes everything. Other questions? Yes.
Pranam, Sadhviji. It's a blessing that I'm sitting here under your guidance. Many a times in my meditation, when I'm meditating, I experience a blissful state, and I feel very good about it. Another moment, a feeling of greatness comes, that I am greater than the other persons. That awareness comes with after a few seconds that this is ego calling, and then damage is done. Damage to the blessing is done. How do I control that?
Beautiful. These are the games of the mind. We're meditating, we're meditating, we're meditating. And then we hit that moment. We're just aware of the breath, chanting the mantra. And then we have that moment where the voice inside goes, yeah, I'm here. Oh, it's so great. Oh, I'm the best meditator in the world. Yeah, this is enlightenment. And then it's gone. But it's the game of the mind. So first of all, you should know that you're in good company. This is very, very common. It's what the mind does. And the good news is it's not lost forever. And as you meditate more and more, and you know this is the tendency, as you start to hit that moment, you just are able to bring a little bit of extra consciousness to stay on the breath, to know my mind is just about to go into that spiritual ego. And you just watch it with a little bit more attention. Keeping the awareness just on the breath, you just stay a little bit more aware. Chanting the mantra, anchored in the breath. And if it happens, it's all right. Just be aware it's happened. Watch it happen. And then bring it back. Bring it back. Just recognize it's just another wave of the mind. One moment it's an itch. The next moment it's a to-do list. The next moment it's a grudge. The next moment it's that I'm enlightened and the best meditator in the world. They're just waves of the mind doing their thing to keep me from finding that stillness. It's the mind continuing to try to make sure you remember that it's there. That's all it is. The ego just doesn't want to be forgotten. The very first job that I ever had was a summer camp counselor. I was in college, and I was in charge. It was a day camp, and I was in charge of the youngest group of kids. I've always loved kids, so it was a job by choice that I loved. I did it 2 summers in a row. And I was in charge of the 4 and 5-year-olds who were just, oh my God, so cute. Anyway, and there was a little boy in my group, I'll never forget. His name was Benji. And Benji used to pull on me, and I would bend down, yes, Benji? And he would say, you know what, 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 you know what? And I'd say, what, Benji, what? And he'd say, you know what, you know what, you know what, you know what, you know what? And there never actually was anything to say. But he just so yearned for that eye to eye, there I am with you, I'm fully there, I'm listening. And you could always see his mind like try to think of something, but I mean, poor kid was 4 or 5, you know. And he just kept, you know what? And it was so sweet because I realized so quickly, he just wants to be listened to. He doesn't actually have something so critical to say. He just wants to be seen. He just wants his moment. And I always think of Benji when my mind does this, is that it's just my mind, sort of the ego in the mind being like Benji, trying some way to not get forgotten. I'm here. Oh, the itch didn't work. All right, the to-do list didn't work. The grudge from 10 years ago didn't work. Well, all right, let's try some spiritual ego. So, since meditation is vastly different than being a counselor for summer camp, we don't turn our attention to it. I mean, I felt like my responsibility as his counselor was to give him as much attention as he could get. He clearly needed it. When we're working with the ego, that's obviously not the goal. The ego just feeds on more and more attention. But to just realize it's as harmless as a child just clamoring for our attention. So don't get wrapped up in it. I mean, it would be like me saying, oh, for God's sakes, Benji, say something already. I mean, that would be so inappropriate, unnecessary, and not in alignment with what the moment needed. I didn't need him to tell me anything. And so, same thing when the mind plays its games. Don't get caught up in the content. The content is irrelevant. It's just trying to disturb you. It's just trying to make sure that you don't reach a state beyond mind. When reaching that state is exactly the goal. So when it happens, it's all right. Notice it. Don't berate yourself. Don't tell a story about it. Just bring the mind back. Just start over. There you go. And you'll just notice it as just another wave. It happens. And you just bring the mind back. Another piece with that, though, is, and this is true with all of what happens in our meditation, while you're in meditation is not the time to be looking at content. It's not the time to be analyzing, or it's the time to just be bringing the mind, bringing the awareness back to the breath, to the mantra, to that state of just pure awareness. But you've got the rest of your day. And if you notice that the mind tends to go in a certain direction when you are meditating, look at that in the rest of your day. So for example, you may find as you move through your non-meditating day that you're inclined toward judgment. That maybe, as you're walking into satsang and you see other people going out to pizza, that there's a moment of judgment of, I'm so much better because I'm going to satsang, and these people are going off to pizza. Or maybe you find yourself sitting in a restaurant sometime and you're eating vegetarian food and you're drinking, sparkling water. And the people at the table next to you are eating non-veg food and they're drinking beer. And the mind is judging them. I'm so much better. In your non-meditative time, the more you can work with these tendencies, the less you will find that they disturb you during meditation. That which is there in your subconscious is that which is going to come during meditation. It's similar to what comes up in dreams. dreams are obviously the mind just going much farther out than in meditation, but if you notice what you dream about, it tends to be about what you fill your day with. Right? Pujya Swamiji always says, you're not going to have a dream of Russia if you've never been to Russia, seen pictures of Russia, read a book about Russia. It's not going to just spontaneously arise in a dream. You're going to have dreams about what your life is like, what you're thinking about, what TV shows you're watching. And so if you want to have a more peaceful night, you change what you're filling your mind with, what you're filling your subconscious with. In the same way, if your mind is going in certain directions during meditation, well, it's a great insight into knowing, okay, what's the way I tend to go? And then just being aware of it in the rest of the day. There's some of us tend to go into the to-do lists. Oh my God, I forgot to do that. Oh my God, Some tend to go into the fear of the future. What about this? What's going to happen? Grudges of the past, or this bittersweet, everything was better then, the good old days. We've all got different tendencies of where our mind tends to wander. And meditation is a great way of seeing what those tendencies are and then working with them the rest of the time. And it'll impact your meditation a lot. Yes, of course. Any other questions? Yes.
Pranam Sadhviji. My question is, we are always surrounded with people who are very toxic in their behavior or the way they deal with us. And when we go deeper into our practice, we understand that we cannot change or control other people's behavior. So we have to learn to accept it. But at the same time, we know that the other person is mentally aware that it should not affect us, but it still does leave its imprints on us.
If you want to be healthy in the body and you eat junk food, you can get by it when you're really young. But as we start to get older, it starts to take a toll on the body. And if you make a commitment, I want my body to be healthy, we'll have to avoid junk food. Doesn't mean I can never have a French fry, but I have to make a really concerted effort that the water I drink is going to be clean, the food I eat is going to be clean, fresh, organic, healthy, the air I breathe. You start making really committed efforts. The same is true about our spiritual world. We're energetic beings. And the energy that impacts us is not just that in our food or water or air, it's all of it. Think for a moment about the last rock concert you were at. How it feels in the body when the music, literally, I mean, you literally feel the body vibrating. Sometimes during yoga festival, we have Shiva Maniji here, and he's this amazing percussionist, and you sit there and you listen to him, and it's beautiful and amazing. And I literally feel my body is vibrating. I mean, there is something about the actual sound waves that is causing my physical body to vibrate. And it lasts hours. I mean, I come back, I lie in bed, and I still feel like my body is vibrating. Now, that's just music. But everything's energy. And so we're literally being impacted constantly on really powerful levels by what we surround ourselves by. It includes the music you listen to. Not just the, volume and the bass and the this and that, but the words, the meaning. It includes the movies you watch, the TV shows you watch. It includes who you're following on social media, like what's going into your psyche. A lot of us are really good about the food we eat through the mouth, but we're not nearly as good about what we're eating through our eyes, through our ears, through our thoughts. And then, of course, you've got the people around you who are energetic beings. And we're all putting energy out into the world. I mean, if I shout at you, there's energy there. Not just the volume, but there is a whole energetic transmission. You'd have to be a rock not to feel it. I mean, even plants respond, right? I mean, we now even know that you yell at a plant and it responds differently. So now you think about a person, and a person who's got a relationship with the person who's yelling. It's impacting us hugely. So we need to do two different things. Number one, avoid those situations as much as you can. I realize some are situations that are not quite so easy to just get up and walk out of. But that doesn't mean that you have to be with someone 24/7. There are ways of navigating even under the same roof scenarios or in the same office scenarios. Without leaving a family, without leaving a job, there are ways of navigating how you protect your energy. Whether it's the schedule you keep. You don't have to spend that much time with someone just because they are under the same roof or in the cubicle next door. Some of it, obviously, you can't avoid, but a lot of it you can avoid. So you've really got to protect yourself and protect your energy. But then also the second part is the internal work, which is the awareness that I'm not just an energetic receiver, I'm also an energetic transmitter. Because as spirit, as soul, as heart, as love, I'm not just a sponge that soaks up what's happening around me. I'm a generator. And so what you've got to do is put in a special practice, especially before you go into that physical field, energetic field of the other being, is just a really conscious, I'm shifting from energetic receiver to energetic transmitter. And it doesn't mean that you have to go there with an attachment that you're going to change the other person. But at least your energetic field is full of the love you're transmitting. I mean, if you take the sponge analogy, it would be the equivalent of soaking that sponge up before you went into the situation, so it was already full. If my sponge is already full, you can stick it anywhere, it's not going to absorb that much because it's already full. So in the same way, just a real conscious internal shift from, okay, now we are transmitting. all that love, all that truth, all that awareness, all that consciousness. Just transmit it. And even if it doesn't necessarily change the other person, it'll change your experience. You at least will be moving through the world in an energetic field of love. But then make sure to keep replenishing your field. That then becomes your work through your sadhana, through your seva, through your how you spend your time. That's what's going to replenish you. Because there have to be moments in our life when we say, okay, now I'm receiving. And whether it's sitting in arati, sitting on the banks of Ganga, sitting in meditation, sitting in satsang, sitting in the arms of a loved one, lying under a tree, whatever it may be, there have to be conscious moments then that we are refilling ourselves. Of course. We'll start with you tomorrow. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening, a beautiful dinner, and we'll look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. It's a beautiful, rainy night. And of course, a beautiful morning and day to our family joining us from all over the world.